Dats. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
It's it's our head coach. It's the face of the franchise. It's the direction that we're going to be headed. It's a really important decision, and I'd like it to be someone that coaches here for 16 years and has a lot of wins like the last one.
Yeah, Mickey Loomis, Saints general manager, would love another run with a Sean Payton sequel, but we'll see what happens. Mickey Loomis, a master of the salary cap, but also master of not saying anything at press conferences, debuting the draft or kind of debuting coaching searches. I'm Mike Nabors. Welcome to another Been There, Done That podcast. Before I bring in my partners, we got to give a shout out to our sponsor, DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of Super Bowl 56, is officially live in Louisiana with mobile sports betting just in time for the big game. Right now, you can place a bet in Louisiana with DraftKings Sportsbook without leaving the comfort of your couch. To add to the excitement, DraftKings is giving new customers a special offer that you don't want to miss. Bet just $5 or more on any playoff game and win $280 in free bets if your team is victorious. We're going to get to Mickey Loomis, his thoughts on the coaching search, his thoughts on Sean Payton. We're going to delve into Joe Burrow, the LSU star, now the Cincinnati Bengals star, the Super Bowl potential star. And we're also going to get into Tom Brady, a funeral they're having in Tampa, and all things in between as I bring in my partners, producer Justin Thomas and Scott Shanle. Shanle, you're around Mickey Loomis for a long, long time. I would love to read his mind when he's being asked these questions after the season, just previewing coaching searches and draft. I mean, I know he doesn't want to give the media anything, but, man, I watched his press conference from Mobile, 10 minutes of nothing.
Yeah, well, I think what Mickey's wondering is, how the hell did I get here? What world were we supposed to be doing this separate? Because I really thought when it all was said and done, I thought Sean and Mickey are really good friends. I thought they would have both stepped away at the same time. I really think maybe that was something that was considered in the next few years. But there was a reason why there was a 2-hour meeting, and I'm sure there was some discussion of talking Sean out of leaving when he did. But I think Mickey's probably just trying to remember how to do this. It's not normal to be a GM and not do this for 16 years. What type of coach? A lot has changed. The game has changed. The philosophies have changed. Players have changed. You're hiring this time around is way different than the type of coach you wanted in 2016. So I think he said little because I don't know if he knows much about what he wants at this point.
Before I check in with our man Justin, it's timely that you brought all this up because Mickey Loomis, after Sean Payton had his 5-hour presser, met with the media and said, you know what, I really don't want to comment much on the loss of Sean because emotionally it's tough and I'm going to need some time to collect myself. And then I'll talk about it in Mobile. He was asked about it in Mobile, and here's what he had to say about Sean Payton.
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts, and I just want to gather myself before I express them. It's hard to summarize 16 years in a few sentences, but when I do, I want to make sure I do it right.
Shanle, this is a week later. He still can't compose himself. This is it's pretty emotional for him.
Yeah, you could take it a couple different ways. You can take it as, he really does need some time. He wants to honor him in a more of a lengthy fashion. Or maybe he's still mad. Maybe he's still a little upset and blindsided by this move because, as fans, as former players, I think we were all a little bit blindsided. When you sit back and say 16 years is a long time, he deserves to go on and do other things. It's not always that easy when you're the guy who hires him. You're the guy who gave him a contract extension. There's 3 years left on his deal. So you as a GM plan for that. So maybe, there's the phases of grieving are different for everybody. Maybe Mickey, by that comment, you can justify maybe he's still in the anger phase a little bit.
Well, Tampa Bay, they're in the anger phase with Tom Brady. We'll get into that later on. But Justin, what phase are you in with Sean Payton right now?
I've come to acceptance. I mean, it was shocking. I really didn't expect it. It took me a while. I was a little depressed. But look, there's always new eras for every team, and the last new era we had brought us Drew Brees and Sean Payton. So who's not to say that something like that can't happen again? I think you have to stay positive.
Shanle, I think it's very healthy the way Justin is expressing his emotions in this podcast.
Justin's making me feel better because I went from shocked to sad to now scared. I'm scared about what the future holds because the odds of getting another Sean Payton, Drew Brees back to back is not very likely.
It's true.
And I don't want to be a franchise that cheers for 30 years like the Bengals did to get back to a playoff game. So I'm a little apprehensive until I know probably who the head coach is going to be and who the quarterback, more importantly, is going to be.
Yeah, you know what? You talk about all of that. We're going to get to, Joe Burrow, and I have some great sound for Shanle I'm going to surprise him with to get his reaction, so you want to stick around for that. But what do you think Sean Payton's feeling now? I mean, for his whole life at this point, he was on a team. He's preparing for the next season. I remember asking Brees that, for the first time in his life back in August, since his freshman year in Austin, Texas, he wasn't in camp kind of getting ready for a football season. I think right now for Payton, if I had to read his mind, I think he's kind of relieved. I think he's kind of having fun with it right now, I would think.
There's no question. And especially, the only thing I can equate it to is, after every football season, the grind that it takes, mental strain that it takes for a coach, be there at 2, 3 in the morning, you're staying there until 10, 11 at night, midnight. It is a grind. And now the off season, as players, we get to step away. We get to go home with our families, visit family, go on vacations. Coaches do that briefly, but then they're right back building for the draft, talking about free agency. It really is a grind. So I'm sure he is loving this time away. And there's no doubt he really thought about this. He really thought what he would be leaving, what he would be stepping into outside of football. And, that's why we talked about the different grievances, the different stages. I went from, at the time when I was shocked to sad, and then I was happy for him too. Because I feel like, man, if anybody's deserved this, it's him. But it's just the jealousy part. You don't want him coaching anybody else. You're saddened because you're worried about the future of the franchise. But on many levels, I was happy for him, and I hope he is enjoying life right now.
The relief that was on his face at that last press conference, to me, showed a man who was at peace with his decision and was kind of looking forward to what was next. And he doesn't, he may get a media job, and I'm sure he has all these offers. He's sorting through it. But I think it's just it's excitement for him because he doesn't know exactly what's next, but he knows it's going to be good, whatever it is.
Yeah, well, yeah. I hope he was telling the truth at the press conference. Said, "Have I heard from anybody? I called my agent. Has anybody?" I know you don't. Yeah, I know you don't need the money, Sean, but you can't tell me there hasn't been something discussed. There were teams calling him that day, asking him to coach. Like, he is going to be in high demand no matter what he does. But as a former player, Saints fan, I hope he does not come back and coach anybody else, because the jealousy part of me does not want our coach going to help the Cowboys win, going to do something for somebody else and helping them win. It's a possessive and jealousy thing. Like, go to TV, go to Monday Night Football, go to Fox, do that for 20 years, be the next John Madden, and we'll ride off into the sunset.
But Shanle, he's going to coach again, don't you? Don't you believe that?
I don't believe it. I think part of me thinks that he might. He left that door open just in case, because you never know.
Yeah.
If he bombs at broadcasting. Broadcasting isn't just, hey, I know a lot of football, so I can go do it. You have to have. You either have it or you don't. And we've seen many players get into it and get right back out of it. We've seen other coaches get into it and get back out of it. It's not for everybody. So if he goes and does it and enjoys it, I hope that's what he sticks with and keeps doing. Because let's be honest, it's not going to be about the money. These guys calling games, he will make more money calling a game next year than he will coaching football. And that's just the reality of it. So it's not about the money. It's going to be about the missing the relationships.
Yeah, I think Sean Payton, if he lets himself go in his opinions like he did in that last press conference, I think he can be good. It's always a wild card to me on how these guys will be. I think Drew would be a lot better if he wasn't as politically correct, frankly. But that's Drew Brees, and that's who he is. Like, Tony Romo and Collinsworth will let themselves go a little bit more. I just don't know if Payton has that whole package, but I'm wanting to find out. Let's give him a chance, because I heard somebody say this, that NBC ought to have an alternative, the Manning cast, and have Brees and Payton just break down games. And they're like their respective houses. How about that?
Listen, I watched the Manning cast. Maybe it was want to hate too much on the Monday Night Football crew this year, but maybe it was the crew that was calling games. I ended up watching more of the Manning cast than I did the regular telecast, and
Absolutely.
that is odd for me. That really is odd for me because I'm a guy who likes to watch the game, break it down, listen to what they're saying, listen to their insight about the game. But this year, I watched a couple Manning casts, and I was like watching the game, but I was still caught up in the side conversation, which I usually don't do during games. And so maybe it is the future of football for a lot of fans to watch football that way.
Absolutely. I thought this was interesting in an interview with Dan Patrick that Sean Payton defended Jason Witten because Dan Patrick said, well, Jason Witten, wasn't ready. And Sean Payton said, well, it's not like he had a great supporting cast. Whoa, Joe Tessitore throwing him under the bus. Booger under the bus. How about that?
Wow.
Yeah.
But I think, yeah, that shocks me. Hey, there's your honesty that you want, right?
Exactly.
If you get that into the booth,
Yeah.
maybe people like that. But Sean was there in Dallas when they drafted Jason, designed a lot of plays for Jason. I think he's sticking up for his former players, and that's the one thing a lot of players love about Sean is once he's in the foxhole with you, he's in. So I think that's him sticking up for a former player too, because we can say it. Witten was not good. I played with Jason; he was not good in the booth.
Yeah. Well, I love that Payton defended the media and how he treated the media in his final presser. I've never heard a coach say, I should have done this, I should have done that. So maybe the next time Payton sees me, it'll be a big bear hug or something, Shanle. But he was, he was never mean to me. But I thought that was really indicative of his personality, that he was that self-aware that, he said, I screwed up on Ninkovich and I screwed up the way I treated the media. You could tell that was part of his thought process. And just looking back at his whole tenure as a head coach.
They say you always remember the losses more than the wins. That was a coach showing you that that's absolutely true. He was giving you his 16-year timeline, and obviously he's going to remember more or give more shout-outs to the players that were there at the beginning because there wasn't the success. The logo didn't mean what it's meant the last 10 years. You didn't have to go there in free agency. It wasn't a destination place, and now it is. And I think he gave the shout-out to the 06 team, and then he went to his mistakes that he made. And Rob Ninkovich was one of those huge mistakes. He's like, man, I let him in the building a second time, asked him to be a long snapper, so I messed up on him twice. Those things bothered the heck out of him, knowing that he was wrong. Nobody wants to admit they were wrong. An NFL head coach certainly hates to admit he was wrong. But I also think it showed another side of Sean that he was willing to admit that and was like basically saying, I wasn't perfect the whole time I was here.
All right, we're going off the rails a little bit, but I want to ask you this. You came in late in camp. How much were you around Ninkovich in that camp, or were you at all?
Yeah, Rob was a rookie that year, and I remember looking at Rob. He was an undersized defensive end for a 4.3. I knew he went to Purdue, and Rob was a great guy. Perfect locker room guy. Got to know him pretty well. They released him before we played Indy, I believe. Maybe that was 07, because he was there in 06. Before we played Indy to open the season, they were doing their banner, and Joe Vitt told us linebackers we released Ninkovich, and Fajita was mad. Fajita told me. We both went to Joe Vitt the next day after the game. We're like, why would you guys release this guy? We were talking about how good of a player he is, how good a person he is. He's explosive. He can make plays because he mainly played special teams. And Joe Vitt was like, really? He's kind of undersized. And really, you guys think that? And so to this day, Fajita and I always give the coaches crap because we stood up for Rob and they let him go. Then they had him in the building again, asked him to be a long snapper. So we give Sean and Joe Vitt a lot of crap about that.
All right, this isn't more likely, but just off the top of your head, Shanle, better draft class, 06 or 2017?
Wow. I'm going to go 06 because I think
it's tough, though, man. It's tough.
Well, it is, but 17, they're star players. Kamara, obviously, star player. Mm-hmm. When I think of 17, I think of Kamara and I think of Lattimore. Those are two star players on both sides of the ball. When I think of 06, I think of pillars in a foundation that led to sustained success for a number of years.
Did you write that? Did you write that
No,
before I asked?
No.
That was good. I like that.
Listen, Colson, 10-plus years. Jari Evans, Hall of Fame. Go down the list of Roman Harper, 10-plus years. You don't get that out of a lot of draft classes. So I'm going to go with the 06 draft class.
I just was thinking that the one player I thought that took 2017 over the hump is me watching the damn Cincinnati Bengals, and your boy Trey Hendrickson is just friggin' all over the field, man. The fact that he was a part of that class that had so much star power, man, it's amazing what they did with 2017. 06 too, but you could hear in Peyton's voice before we get to the rest of this podcast, last thing, you could hear in Peyton's voice every time he mentioned not only the 06 team, But boy, when he really broke down the '06 draft class, how emotional and how special that group was to him.
Yeah, I mean, just for the reason we listed, it was.
Yeah.
You talked about Trey, and Trey is a heck of a player, but I think that furthers the point of the '06 classes. Those guys were in New Orleans a lot longer. Free agency, they weren't gone after 4 years.
Yeah, that's true.
And playing somewhere else. So I think those guys will always hold a special place in his heart because they were his. It's like his kids. That he chose them. They chose to stay there, and they were great players.
And how about Hendrickson all over the field? Your guy Eli Apple dropping the sure pick six, and then Von Bell's the hero. It's like, what the hell's going on over there, man?
Couldn't have played out any more perfect. If anybody saw on Twitter, Eli Apple trending, Saints fans getting a piece of Eli Apple, couldn't have played out any better. Our nightmare would have been him catching that ball, returning it for a pick six. He would have went wild on Twitter. So it ended up perfect. He got scorched a couple times in the game, had a couple penalties. He did his Eli Apple thing, dropped a key interception in the game, but somebody else got to be the hero.
His Eli Apple thing. That's a who dat karma right there, I think. I love Von Bell when he was in New Orleans, though. Von Bell, great. Von Bell told me one time he wants to be a sportscaster when he retires. So that'll be interesting to watch. Great guy. Really happy for him. All right, let's move on to the Saints, the post-Payton era. They've interviewed 3, okay? Dennis Allen, Aaron Glenn, Brian Flores. Mikey Loomis says they're going to interview at least 3 more. Is Dennis Allen still your leader in the clubhouse, or are you starting to wonder now a little bit, Shanle?
I'm wondering what's taken so long to name Dennis Allen the head coach. That's what I'm wondering. I firmly believe everything Dennis has done for the organization, that he's earned the right to be the head coach. I get this is the first time you've had a chance to interview other coaches. You want to see what else is out there. But there's a lot of unknowns with bringing a guy in from the outside. You have the culture built already. You have the blueprint. Sean left the blueprint on the desk when he walked out. You elevate Dennis Allen to head coach. You elevate somebody else to defense coordinator. You try to keep that together as much as possible because there's a lot of teams that hate the fact they have to start over. So I really don't want him to start over. I don't want him to tear it down and have a new coach bring in all his new coaches, this and that. I think right now you keep it structured the way it is, and Dennis Allen should be and would be beside himself if he's not named the head coach, because what more can he do to prove that he should get that next step? Been a phenomenal defensive coordinator, been an interim coach for you, won games. A lot of players in that locker room love Dennis. So I just hope they're doing their due diligence, taking the time to meet other people for future jobs maybe. But you got to elevate Dennis Allen.
What do you know about Aaron Glenn? I mean, you have a good pulse of a lot of guys who still play for the Saints. Obviously, you're in in communication with a lot of former players you played with. What do you get from Aaron Glenn?
Yeah, Aaron he played a long time in the NFL. When I was a young guy in Dallas, he played here. He was a Bill Parcells guy. Aaron's a great leader, well-spoken, very smart when it comes to X's and O's and understanding the team chemistry part of the game. So I think Aaron is a really good coach. But you have an opportunity to elevate somebody who's been a head coach before. Would Aaron be a hard sell to the Saints fan base? He might be. He's been a Saints coach before. He coached up Lattimore, coached up Marcus Williams. That part Saints fans will understand, but they may not understand the one time Aaron was a defense coordinator in Detroit, they were ranked almost 30th in all major defensive categories. Those things are tough sells to fan bases. Like, wait, you were already a coordinator, but you weren't as good as our coordinator. Why are we not just elevating our guy? So those are going to be the tough sells you have to ask yourself, unless you just think that Aaron could be a better CEO, head coach type, better than Dennis could be. Because right now, Dennis has shown he's been the better DC.
Aaron Glenn, to me, has the same amount of gray hair as Roman Harper, I think. Every time I would see him at practice, is that Roman? No, it's Aaron Glenn. And I used to kid Roman about that. But okay, Brian Flores, interesting. I mean, great job at Miami. Has really a lawsuit that could impact so many moving forward, including himself. What do you think of the dynamic with Brian Flores and the lawsuit? Obviously, the NFL needs to do a better job with minority hiring at all levels. But I mean, I really respect him for doing this, because he's in a position now where he can get some jobs, I would think. And he's really taking a stand in something he believes in.
Well, he took a stand in what he believes in. I think with those texts with Bill Belichick basically saying the Giants already know who they're hiring. And once he found out, he was just going in there for no reason. They were trying to check boxes off the Rooney Rule checklist. I think that's what made him file the lawsuit more than any other thing. I know there were a lot of other things thrown in the lawsuit with the Dolphins paying him to tank, the Denver Broncos showing up hungover to his interview a couple years ago. But I think the most damning thing he has in that lawsuit is showing that he was just a checkbox on the interviewing process. So if the NFL, it's going to be tough to win the lawsuit against the NFL. I think maybe there will be a settlement. But at the same time, I'm less optimistic than you, Mike, because when the NFL has a vendetta against you, they're going to make sure they take it out. We never saw Colin Kaepernick again. We saw they suspended Sean Payton for a year. Once you do something to the NFL, they're going to make sure to make your life hell. So he may win the lawsuit. He may win financially. But I don't know if we're going to see him as a head coach in the NFL, because the NFL does a good job of holding grudges.
I heard a good point this week that the players, obviously, you have a union, and when Bountygate happened, it really served the players well because all the suspensions were nullified, but the coaches don't have a union. So Sean Payton was basically by himself. But it goes back to your point. It was Sean Payton on his own against the NFL, unlike the players who at least had a union. I mean, it's crazy to me that the coaches don't have any protection in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I'm not sure why they ever did it that way either. It's weird to me that coaches aren't protected, maybe because there's only 32 of them and they just let them all stand on their own. But you're right. The whole Bountygate thing, the players were protected by the union. Obviously, Vilma went out on his own, and he was brought back halfway through the season, but then he still tried to sue the league for defamation of character, which he didn't win. It's tough to win lawsuits against the NFL. They're going to do anything in their power to make you look bad. So, but look bad. So it's a countdown right now of the NFL is collecting dirt on Brian Flores as we speak. They're looking for emails, text, all sorts of things so they can say, look, this guy has no credibility. That's what they're going to do. And so when you fight against the NFL, they're going to fight dirty.
That sounds like John Gruden in a way. I mean, not that John Gruden was right, but you're not going to tell me John Gruden's the only one sending emails like that too. I mean, come on.
There's no question. No one's going to say, hey, what John Gruden did, was right. And he's okay to do it. And I understand that. And we should all condemn it. But you're right, Mike. If you went to every owner's email and text and every coach who's coached in the last 20 years, do you know this type of stuff you would see? So it's a little unfair that one guy's emails were thrown out there. And I really think there were a lot worse things inside the Washington organization. And I think John Gruden was he was the sacrificial lamb they threw in front of the bus.
Yeah. All right. We're going to talk quarterbacks here before we get to more likely. And, we're going to be talking about quarterbacks for a long time. I think we got to get through the coaching search. But right now, I mean, I just can't see Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson coming to New Orleans. So let's just assume that's not going to happen. Okay. Besides that, is there anybody out there that you really love more than Jameis? I mean, because Garoppolo doesn't excite me. Ryan Fitzpatrick. I mean, maybe Derek, is it Derek Carr? I want to say David Carr.
Derek Carr, yeah.
I don't know if the Raiders want to get rid of him. I mean, I just don't know. I think Jameis, this may work in his favor. I'm not sure there's a lot of quarterbacks out there that are better than Jameis right now.
Well, I think I really take the opposite side. I think there's a lot of quarterbacks the Saints would rather have than Jameis. Mm-hmm. I just don't think that they're going to be able to do it with their salary cap. Jameis getting hurt is not going to command a lot of money in free agency, so he may be on a one-year prove-it deal, which is right up the Saints' alley when it comes to finances. So that being said, I think they're going to be forced into that role, but I think Derek Carr's in his last year of his deal. I think he's somebody that the Saints would love to have and have for another 5 to 6 years while they draft somebody and let that draft pick a la Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre work out for a while. There are – when you go down the list of quarterbacks in the league, and I did this one day, like look at the backups, because that used to be what you do. Let's find a good backup quarterback in a bad situation that could come in and start. There really isn't that. That doesn't really exist in the NFL right now. And I think because the salary cap structure has changed to now where you draft a kid and he plays right away. They don't sit behind other guys. They don't wait for their turn. And so the quality of backups right now in the NFL is not great. But I mean, you really have to – the debate comes down to, do you think Jimmy Garoppolo gives you a better chance to win than Jameis Winston? And those are the level or tier of quarterbacks that you're going to be discussing when you talk about, are they an upgrade over Jameis Winston?
And I guess when I look at those two, I think we've seen the best of Garoppolo. I think the exciting thing about Winston is I don't know if we've seen the best of him. I really feel like, he put up a 5,000-yard passing season. We've definitely seen the worst of him. But I don't know if we've seen the best of him, and that's what excites me. And, yeah, he scares the hell out of me, Jameis Winston, absolutely. But Garoppolo, to me, By the way, Jimmy Garoppolo, if you're going to play the way you did the last week of the regular season, why don't you just play that way? I mean, why do you have to play that way against the Saints? Because I didn't see him play that way at all in any other game this year. What the hell was that? But,
I know, watching that game, watching the Rams throughout the playoffs, like, you really wanted to keep the Saints out. You were up 17-0 on the 49ers team, and it makes you sick.
Unbelievable. All right, well, we'll break down this quarterback thing. It's going to be interesting with the Saints. Boy, how about I live in Tampa. We talked about this in this podcast. But, boy, the mood here, man, is just it's like a funeral. Tom Brady, I can't believe he left. It's like the jilted lover here, man. Buccaneers, do you remember it was just a couple of years ago you had Dirk Cutter and you guys were not even sniffing the playoffs? I mean, my whole thing is you should be thankful that you had the 2 years instead of the other way where we can't believe Tommy left us. I mean, it's Heartbreak Hotel here in Tampa, Shanle, right now.
I bet it is, and that's why you need to be thankful that Tom Brady chose you. That's really what it came down to. Tom Brady could have chose not any other place, but another situation like he chose in Tampa. The guy probably would have won a Super Bowl. We saw that. He proved that. So Tampa Bay fans, be grateful, thankful, get on your knees and say, thank you, Lord, for letting Tom Brady choose our team, letting us have 2 successful seasons and win a Super Bowl, because it's rare that you get a player like that still playing at the top of their game. And I get it. I get they wanted to keep doing it. But at the same time, Tom Brady is a Patriot. He's not a Buck. I mean, you guys got to get over that too. I know he gave you a sweet, heartfelt message when he walked out the door. But I will never think of Tom Brady as a Buccaneer. He is a New England Patriot. You guys got him at the end of his career and got lucky.
Will Tom Brady go in the Ring of Honor in Tampa for only playing 2 years? I say absolutely.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You won a Super Bowl for him, man. Why not? Yeah.
I mean, you would have to Tom Brady should be in any Ring of Honor where he plays, but are there other players who played in Tampa Bay that would say, wait a minute, I played for 12 years, did all this, and this guy got in? Are there any players that would have an issue? Because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Ring of Honor isn't very expansive, is it?
Well, to those players, I'd say it's Tom Brady, shut up. All right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, it's Tom Brady, and he came in and he won a Super Bowl. I mean, they already have the mainstays in there. They have the Derek Brooks, the Warren Sapps, the Rondé Barbers, the John Lynch's in there, even Mike Allstott's in there. The people who need to be in the Bucs Hall of Fame for the most part are in there. So I think that's what makes it interesting to put him in there. How about this though? Just a few years ago in the NFC South, man, you had Brady. You had Brees, you had Cam Newton. Well, not together, but you know what I'm saying. Now next year we're gonna have Jameis, Kyle Trask, Sam Darnold, and Matty Ryan's gonna be the man. Is that the way it's gonna be next year?
It's the NFC South has gone from the best division of football to probably the worst quarterback play in the division. It's just the reality. Unless something crazy happens this offseason, the quarterback play in the NFC South is not going to be drawing a lot of TV ratings on the weekends, I don't think.
Absolutely. All right, well, I was looking forward to this part of the podcast before we get to more likely. Joe Burrow, and if you've listened to the podcast, you know that Scott Shanle has known Joe Burrow basically his whole life. You played with Joe's brother at Nebraska. You've known Joe's dad for a long time. I just hate to do this to you, Shanle, but this is what Joe Burrow wanted in his life, and it just never happened. He told this to Dan Patrick a year ago, or actually 2 years ago.
I was a Nebraska fan growing up because, my dad and both my brothers played there. And so I was a diehard Nebraska fan.
Did they recruit you?
They did not.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
That hurt?
That hurt real bad, yeah. That's where I wanted to go.
So wait, your brothers and your dad, and your dad doesn't have any pull there to say, or your brothers to say?
We thought we did. We thought we did.
Wow. That's got to hurt bad.
Yeah.
Did your brothers make fun of you that you didn't get, brothers can be?
No, they just weren't very happy with the program.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They weren't very happy.
Yeah, well, I think you did all right there.
Yeah, I think I did all right.
First of all, I love that Burrow is confident, not cocky. He's just so matter of fact. Yeah, I think I did all right. But Shanle, let's play the what if game. If Joe Burrow went to Nebraska, how would Nebraska be different? How would Joe Burrow be different? How would Scott Frost be different?
Yeah, I think Nebraska's program would definitely be elevated into a different status because I think Joe Burrow's shown no matter where he goes, he's a winner, and he takes everybody else with him. So Nebraska would be good, but I don't know if things would have turned out for Joe the way they did because Nebraska would not have had Jamar Chase. They would not have had the number of good players around him to go on that run to have he would not have won a national championship in Nebraska. That's the easiest way to say it. And so maybe he gets drafted in the 4th round. Maybe he doesn't even get a chance to start in the NFL until like Tom Brady, somebody gets hurt or 3 or 4 years later. So I definitely think it all worked out the way it was supposed to work out. Listen, Nebraska messed it up not only once, but twice. Bo Pelini didn't recruit him. That's what he was talking about. He didn't recruit him, told his dad he wasn't good enough. After that, Ohio State offers him, which Ohio State's better than Nebraska, so that was weird. Urban Meyer's like, yeah, we'll give you an offer. He goes to Ohio State. He's playing behind Dwayne Haskins, which, by the way, he could not believe that he was not starting over Dwayne Haskins. Let's just put it that way. He leaves Ohio State. He goes to Scott Frost and says, I want to transfer to Nebraska. Nebraska tells his dad, he's not better than the guy we have, which is Adrian Martinez, which was never played it down. He was his big-time recruit. He goes to LSU. So Nebraska not only messed it up once, they messed it up twice, which is even more embarrassing.
All right, Shanle, how long have you known Joe Burrow? Have you known him his whole life, pretty much?
Probably since he would have been about 7 or 8 when he used to come around the program when his dad coached DBs.
When did you, because you know the family, you still keep in contact with them. At what point, you see this kid? I remember you told me a story that he was in the game room while you guys you're hanging out with his brothers, and he just kept going until he got the high score. At what point how amazed are you seeing him now and what he's accomplished? But can you look back and say, maybe I saw something back then, or is that even too impossible to track?
No, I think when you look at his intensity and his focus and his refusal to lose, I told you the story about him playing the video game at our bowl game. And I was trying to talk to him, and his brother's like, no, he's not going to talk to him. He's not going to leave this game until he sets the high score. And so that story sticks with me as to what Joe Burrow what he was like then, how he's always been wired, and why he's had success. But, his brother would send me clips of him playing high school football as a quarterback in Ohio. He was Gatorade Player of the Year. I'm like, dang, this kid's pretty good. Then he said he's going to Ohio State. I'm like, man, is he good enough to play at Ohio State? They're going to be recruiting the top quarterbacks every year. Then he wasn't playing, and I thought, well, maybe he shouldn't have went to Ohio State. Then he went to LSU. He was decent his first year there. It was not a good offense for him, but I was like, I remember talking to his brother, and his brother's like, if he left after this year, what round do you think he's going? And I'm like, he'd be a 5th or 7th rounder probably. And then he comes back, and he's the number 1 pick in the draft, sets all sorts of records. I've never seen a jump from one year to the next year in a player. He is the biggest jump by far I've ever seen in one player at any position. It's been phenomenal.
I remember covering the game in Gainesville when LSU and Joe Burrow lost to the Gators, and Felipe Franks outplayed Joe Burrow his junior year. So it goes back to your point. A year later, nobody saw that coming. But, when you look at all this, he's the little brother, Shanle. How does, the whole dynamic there, the big brothers must have really, not only taken care of him, but really built him up and really worked with him. And to me, it's interesting that the little brother in the family has this much confidence. The kid is and he's not a kid anymore, but he's really confident. It's impressive. It's refreshing in a lot of ways because he's not like Johnny Football. He's just confident. He really is.
Yeah, he believes in himself. I think it comes from his dad. His dad, Jimmy, played at Nebraska in the 70s, and he's been a coach. Recently, he retired. He was a defense coordinator at Ohio with Frank Solich. So he's coached a lot of football. But his dad had a quiet confidence about him. His dad, when he talked to you in front of the room, when he coached something, when he installed something, you believe, man, this is really going to work. So I think that swagger comes from his dad, Jimmy. And his dad, Jimmy, taught him the X's and O's, even at a young age. He always had the advantage on the field. And just to see his competitive streak and the amount of focus he has, like he doesn't care about social media. He doesn't care about doing progressive commercials. He is about winning. And I think that's refreshing this day and age.
Remember when he tweeted at the Combine a couple of years ago about how they said Joe Burrow's hands were too small? Can these scouts just stop it? It's every year. We're hearing it this year. I just get a kick out of all this stuff, Shanle. But in terms of confidence, here's what Joe Burrow said to Dan Patrick before the draft 2 years ago. And this shows you how much confidence Joe Burrow had heading into the NFL.
Do you have any doubts?
Any doubts about myself?
Yeah.
No.
Nothing.
No. Why would I?
Well, you're going into the NFL.
Yeah, and it's going to be very, very difficult, but I'm confident that I'm going to work just about as hard, if not harder, than everybody else. And, if I might be a good player, I might not be a good player, but I know I'm going to work my hardest to be the best player I can be.
Doubts? Why would I? You don't hear that from many young players, Shanle. You don't.
Well, I love that he doesn't have doubts because of his preparation, because of the work ethic. And he's basically saying, if I work as hard as I work, and I know I work, and I'm not a good player, I can live with that. But he believes in the amount of work he puts in that it's going to pay off. And there's tons of players that those are things you can't measure when you go to watch the combine or you watch the Senior Bowl. And you look at players like Johnny Manziel and all these guys who flamed out early in their career. They didn't have that. They didn't have that work ethic, that commitment to work. They wanted the glamour, the lights of the NFL, the paycheck. They wanted all that. They wanted the party after the games, but they didn't know what it was like to work and to get better and to put the work in and day out. Joe Burrow loves that part of the game, and that's why he's going to have a long career.
Sounds an awful lot like some guy named Brees, doesn't it?
Exactly. And, Drew, I think Burrow ended up telling Drew that he wears 9 because of him.
Yeah.
So he grew up watching Drew, really loves a lot of the game. His style of game, I should say, efficient, leader. The things that Drew did, you see a lot in Joe too.
Speaking of Drew, how about Joe Burrow telling Dan Patrick? This was an intriguing interview. I just kind of pulled it up the other day. The Ohio native telling Dan Patrick who his favorite team was growing up.
My dad being a coach, I moved around a lot when I was really young. And then I moved to Ohio, and Reggie Bush got drafted to the Saints, and Drew Brees is with the Saints. And so because of those two guys, I was kind of a Saints fan growing up a little bit and kind of transitioned to a Browns fan later in my high school career.
I thought it was interesting later in the interview, and you know Reggie real well, and you still keep in contact with him. Dan Patrick said, "Why were you a Reggie Bush fan? That's kind of random." And Joe Burrow, not in a cocky way, but in a confident way, Shanle looks at him and he says, "Did you see him play?"
Yeah, that's a weird question by Dan. Who wasn't a Reggie Bush fan?
Right.
Like, what he did in college football, a lot of people say he's the most exciting college football player they've ever seen. Like Reggie, and not to jump back to Sean's press conference, but Sean thanking Reggie for making it easier to sell tickets. Reggie was a huge draft pick for us. People will argue about it, debate about his NFL career, but Reggie Bush gave you star package immediately. Like, oh, I need to go watch this kid. So it all worked out great that the Texans messed up and took Mario Williams and gave us Reggie Bush, because it made putting fans in the stands a lot easier from day one.
I know we're getting off track, but if you're a Saints fan, you got to love the Shanle stories. We're going all over the map here. I remember interviewing Reggie after his career, after one of the playoff games in the Superdome, and he fully admitted that Kamara was so much more prepared coming into the NFL because he could run between the tackles, and he couldn't run between the tackles, and obviously that was a big criticism of him. I think Reggie, I always really liked Reggie Bush. I mean, he always would talk win or lose. He was always good about coming on the air with me, win or lose after a game, as I mentioned. But I thought that was an interesting comment that Reggie had. And, yeah, I remember just seeing this replay on YouTube recently when you guys beat the Cowboys in 2006, that big game. And he had that big run, and hearing Al Michaels say, "Boy, Houston," because they had the number 1 pick, and then they didn't pick Reggie. You having second thoughts now? Reggie had kind of that weird career where – he didn't live up to the Gale Sayers hype. He was more than a serviceable pro. He's in the Saints Hall of Fame. But I thought early on, as you mentioned, he was a bigger deal than Brees early on. No doubt about it.
No, there's no question. He was Mr. Hollywood. He was the star potential. He was the guy that everybody wanted to go see. You saw tons of Reggie Bush jerseys walking around wherever you went, even when we went to away games. So you're right. Reggie's career never lived up to the hype, and mainly because Reggie was a really good player, but that hype was so far, the bar was set so high for him based on what he did in college. But he had, like you said, you go back to the Dallas game, you go back to the Arizona playoff game, you go back to some of the Minnesota Vikings games. Reggie had huge plays, and that's what he was drafted to do, was make huge plays, and he did that quite a bit throughout his career. He was never going to be Deuce McAllister and rush for 100 yards every week. That was not his role. But you put him back to return punts, home run potential. You put him out on the outside to run routes against linebackers, home run potential. You saw the mismatch game start with Sean Payton using Reggie Bush all over the field. He brought an element to the NFL that I don't know if the NFL really embraced before Reggie got there.
We have Bush, we have Burrow, we have Brees, we have, our favorite part of the show, Justin. It's more likely, this is proof that we can just talk Saints football ad nauseum no matter what time of year. We're already 40 minutes in and we haven't touched more likely, and really nothing happened with the Saints this week other than Mickey Loomis not saying anything for 10 minutes. So let's jump into more likely. Number one, as we bring back Justin, who's always the guinea pig and goes first. But, man, he is becoming a media savvy, and I'm going to say sensitive guy because he really expressed his emotions earlier in the podcast about Sean Payton and his levels of remorse with the Payton resignation. All right, more likely, this is arguably, and we talked about this before we jumped on, the most exciting postseason we've ever seen. I mean, between the back and forth with Mahomes and Allen and Buffalo, and I mean, just game after game after game, it's been great, great, great. I'm going to ask you guys, if you're a general manager and you can have these three quarterbacks, you can go off the board if you want, but I'm going to give you one of these three moving forward. They're about the same age. They're all three studs. Who do you want to lead your football team in the next 10 years? More likely, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, or Joe Burrow?
Oh, man. Can I have all three?
Keep in mind, keep in mind, Mahomes, you have the girlfriend and the brother you got to deal with. I'm just saying.
Right. And the Super Bowl that he's won.
Absolutely, yes. I like Patrick Mahomes. It's just his crew is just kind of bizarre. But anyway, go ahead.
You know what? I have to go with the person who has already proven that they can win the top game, the Super Bowl, and that's Patrick Mahomes. He's been to the Super Bowl twice, won one of them, and so I think you have to go with him until Josh Allen or if Joe Burrow can prove that he can win one as well. I'm going to go with the one who has shown that he can in probably the most high-pressure situation possible, the biggest game in the NFL. But they're all super talented. I almost think you can't go wrong, but I don't know. Scott will probably have a great answer.
Isn't it crazy, though, with the draft that I was always – Shanle and I went back and forth, and I thought I was kind of winning for a little while, and now I'm not winning in the Baker Mayfield thing. I'm not – I was winning a little bit early, and now I'm not – and then you look at these other guys, and I'm definitely not winning. Yeah. So of these three guys, Shanle, moving forward, your general manager, Scott Shanle, who do you take the next 10 years?
Well, I've done a complete reversal on what my answer would have been even maybe a couple months ago. And, I think I would have probably always said Patrick Mahomes, but I think the more Patrick plays, the more I'm starting to think he's a product of Andy Reid. I think he's a great player. I really do. But I think I'm going to go with Josh Allen.
Oh!
Yeah. And Josh Allen, I love his stature. I love his running ability. Wow. I love his arm strength. The guy can throw the ball 80 yards. Yeah. There are so many. I think Josh Allen, and the reason I say that, Mike, is because I think Josh Allen could go to any place and fit into the scheme, whereas the other two, I think, more need a coach to put them in a good scheme. Mahomes, to me, is he's bought into the hype of Mr. Trick Shot. There's too much. True. It's just it's way too much when it doesn't need to be, and I think that is why you've only won one Super Bowl. The guy should have multiple Super Bowls, but. You saw it in last week's game. How the heck do you play that great in one half and then just completely bomb the second half? I don't like that part of it. Joe Burrow, great player, great leader. I think you can win with Joe wherever he goes because he makes people around him better. But at the same time, I was talking about this with somebody the other day. Cincinnati, at the same time they drafted Joe, has had a reemergence in their philosophy. They've actually gone out and got good players. They went out and spent money in free agency. This Super Bowl run, I made the argument with somebody the other day. I'm a huge Joe Burrow fan, but I argue that this Super Bowl appearance is more about their defense than their offense. Their defense has got an interception at the right time in the game, clawed back in the game. They played really good against Tennessee, getting takeaways. So for that reason alone, I'm going to take Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen is a guy who can play anywhere in the NFL because of his attributes.
Burrow had that terrible pass at the end of the game, right before overtime, that really could have made him the GOAT. Yeah. A horrible pass. But with that said, I'm picking Joe Burrow. I don't know, man. There is something to be said for, and his offensive line is horrible, Shanle. When they get him help in that offensive line, I really
that's
want
being kind. That's being
yeah,
generous.
but I want to see what he can do with just an average offensive line for Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Because if he's elevating the Bengals, I mean, I agree with you. The defense is off the charts and really playing, maybe not off the charts, but they're good. And they're picking up players. They've drafted well the last couple of years. They're doing everything that the Bengals haven't done the previous, 10, 15 years. But you mentioned Brees earlier. The great thing about sports, and the reason I frankly love the NFL draft, is because it's so wrong every year. And people miss, even though Burrow was the first overall pick, how he was really lost in the shuffle. How many times did I hear it early in the year that Herbert is the best quarterback in the NFL? And he's great. He's talented. But I would rather have Joe Burrow. There's just something about him, man. He's unflappable. He's a winner, and he's not rattled. And I guess you could say the same things about Mahomes and Allen, but I feel it even more with Burrow because he went in there, and the culture was terrible. And, I don't know. I just think he makes everything better like Brees did. And like Tom Brady, frankly. I think he just kind of like Montana. I know that's elevating him really high, but he just has it. And that's what I love about sports is you can't measure that when you draft a guy really fully until you get him in the building and you see how he is with his teammates and you see how he is in games. So it's funny, that question, we all deliver 3 different answers, which is unusual for us. All right, more likely, number 2, I'm going to bring it back to the Saints. Out of these 3 guys, who do you think is more likely to be gone? You got to think about the cap and obviously free agency, and you have the franchise tag. Who's more likely to be gone out of these 3 guys? Cam Jordan, Teron Armstead, Marcus Williams.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if all 3 are gone.
I hope Cam's not gone, though. Anyway, go ahead.
I know. I don't know how much longer Teron Armstead has in him. It seems like he really struggles with injuries, which is a shame because he's probably one of the best tackles there is. But I definitely think Cam Jordan is I think he'll be my answer. He showed that he's still got something left in the tank. He really came on strong at the end of the year. I think that's going to help his
No, but who's more likely to be gone out of those 3?
That's what I'm saying, Cam.
Oh, Cam. Okay.
I was saying because he played so well, I think that's going to help the Saints, or it'll just increase what he would be able to get.
You're saying he get traded. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Interesting. Cam Jordan. All right, Shanle, what do you think?
My answer changed since the Sean Payton press conference. My answer would have been Marcus Williams because I think he's going to command way too much on the open market for the Saints to compete with that. And for that reason, I think he'll be gone. But I think I'm going to go with Armstead. It was odd to me that Sean chose Armstead.
Yeah.
He gave Toronto he gave him a singular shout out.
It was almost like a subliminal message or something.
Yeah, it was like, get ready because you're going to be somewhere else. And I think it was his way of saying we really appreciated you. He could have did that for a lot of players that he's coached over the last 10 years. So I'm going to go with Armstead just because of that little subtle shout out Sean gave him.
I just can't see Cam Jordan leaving. I agree. I think Marcus Williams is just one of those casualties that they just can't afford. But boy, Armstead, to me, it's just the injury factor. I think you more likely keep a Marcus Williams because you know what you have. You have Cam Jordan, who came along great at the end of the year. I hate losing Armstead. But how about this? You get rid of Armstead, you move Ramczyk to left tackle. How about that?
Yeah. I think that's a very good possibility. Yeah. You're going to have to do something. I'm with Justin. All 3 of those guys could be gone. I just don't think they're going to have the money to re-sign Marcus. He's going to get top dollar in free agency. You already have salary cap problems. You're in the game of cutting guys to free up space. So I don't know. It really comes down to me, like, do I choose between Armstead and Cam? Cam played so well at the end of the year that he may have bought himself another year. I don't know.
In terms of Ramczyk, though, wouldn't he like that move? I mean, it would help him financially moving forward, wouldn't it? Or would he not like that move? I guess it just depends on the guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I know back a while ago, left tackles used to get paid a lot more, but I think his pay is pretty dang good for playing the right side. Mm-hmm. But if Armstead does go, that's probably something you have to consider and see if he can do it. But if he can't do it, just put him back on the right side where he's earned his money.
That'll be interesting. It's going to be another crazy offseason for the Saints. All right, last more likely. The Washington football team, we can finally stop saying that. They're the Washington Commanders. The Commanders, baby. Are you buying or selling Commanders, Justin Thomas?
I just want to sell Washington team as a whole. I mean, they have so many issues. Dan Snyder, I mean, I'm surprised he is still there after the last accusations. Now there's more coming out. I feel like they're in a mode of just throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks. I remember a while ago, there was a list of names that potentially could have been, the new name for the team. I can't remember if Commanders was on there, but I just don't like it. I'm not a fan, and I'm not saying I want to go back to the Redskins name. I think, it's good that we moved on from there, but there's got to be something better than that. And a lot of people had a great point too. What's the nickname from them? You can't call them the Commies. That's not going to work. So it's like there's not much you can do with the name. So I don't know. I'm not a fan, I'll say.
Shanle.
No, it's horrible. It's bad. I agree with Justin. This franchise just continues to make so many bad. It's a USFL name. It is.
Exactly. Yes.
It's a spring league name. Come on, guys. You've had 2 years to do this. You have a stadium that's leaking sewage on people at games. You have rails falling off, almost taking out quarterbacks. You blew this. To me, this was simple, Justin. I'm like, why not just go Red Hawks?
Yeah.
Red Tails, something with the red name in. You get to keep a little bit of what you had. You get to keep the same color scheme. You get to still be the Red Hawks. You're called the Hawks. You put a different logo on your helmet. This was not hard. They absolutely blew this thing for having 2 years to do it.
See, Justin, that's why we love Shanle, because he's not a complainer. Because complainers, they just complain. Shanle, he comes up with solutions, man. Exactly. I'll give you a solution to the problem.
Wait, is that a subtle dig at me for just complaining for my response?
Because this was maybe your best performance on the podcast because you started out with your sensitive side.
Oh, here we go.
And then it was the informative side, and then you had jokes at the end. So we got the whole Justin Platter in this podcast. It was great.
I'm a well-rounded person.
Absolutely. I felt like it could have been worse. I saw the Admirals. But yeah, I agree. I like the red, and do red in there somewhere, just to keep the uniformity and the tradition without being insensitive. It's pretty easy. I heard somebody say you should call them the Washington Monuments. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
Anyway, well, that was pretty well rounded. We'll preview the Super Bowl next week, and we'll see how our Shanley's guy Joe Burrow does against those Rams, who none of us like. I think Joe Glazier say that Sean Payton texted him after the Rams couldn't beat the Niners in last week, we got screwed by the Rams again. You could tell there's no love with Payton for the Rams. I hope he carries that over if he's a broadcaster for sure. But we'd like to thank our friends at DraftKings who have stepped up and become our sponsor. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DUNDAT Podcast and get 56-1 odds on any team. Bet just $5 or more and win $280 in free bets if your team wins. That's promo code DUNDAT Podcast this week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner at Super Bowl 56. Remember, 21 years or older, physically present in Louisiana. Availability varies by parish. Eligibility restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for full terms and conditions. Licensee partner, Gold Nugget, Lake Charles. Gambling problem, please call 1-877-770-STOP-7867. We really appreciate DraftKings. Really creative with a lot of their promotions. Their app you can check out. They feature same game parlays, and the Dundat Podcast. You can win a lot of free money there, so check it out. But Shanle, any final wisdom for me before we talk next week?
No, I think next week we'll hopefully have a head coach to talk about for the Saints. Yeah. We'll talk about the Super Bowl as well, some of the storylines, but the more important news is going to be who is going to be the face of the franchise leading the Saints going forward.
Absolutely. Justin, where are we on Twitter?
At Dundat Podcast.
Check us out on Twitter. Check us out on any of the platforms. I've heard this promo recently, and I'm going to start saying it. Check us out on any platforms that have great podcasts. So that would be the mainstream ones. So give us feedback, give us ratings. We'd love to hear from you. But we appreciate DraftKings. Remember, put the promo code DUNDAT Podcast, and you get 56-1 odds on any team So check out our friends at DraftKings. For Justin Thomas, for Super Bowl winning linebacker Scott Shanle, I'm merely Mike Nabors. We'll preview the Super Bowl and hopefully talk about, as Shanle mentioned, the next Saints coach after Sean Payton. Unbelievable, next week. Thanks for listening.